Welcome back everybody to the Denver Broncos franchise on Madden 20. Today we have the edited offseason for year 3 that was streamed over the weekend. It was a 3-hour live stream. I actually had cut off part of it so I could download the stream to make this edited version. But if you want to watch the long version, it was certainly a lot of fun. And the offseason gave me a variety of challenges I had to take care of. I knew it was going to be a difficult offseason because we had potential retirements, regression to worry about, expiring contracts, who's the quarterback going forward, so many things to take care of. But I knew from the beginning I wanted to work on improving this offense. So we get into the offseason by seeing the Arizona Cardinals are the new Super Bowl champions. Kyler Murray wins his first ring in the series, and this season we'll face every NFC West team, so we'll meet these Cardinals next year. On to retirements. I was very worried about Trent Williams potentially retiring, but that did not happen. Calais Campbell retired, which was pretty predictable, and then Kyle Long. I did not expect that, but he was set to be a free agent anyway. We also see that Antonio Brown has retired, so the Raiders, who have not been very good in the series, now need to find a new playmaker on offense. A lot of big name players have now retired, including AJ Green and others. And so we get on to regression now. Von Miller and Chris Harris were the key players here, and Harris suffered a lot more regression than Miller did. I really wanted to bring back Von Miller, but I wasn't really sure about a variety of our expiring free agents. I made sure to fix Josh Rosen's contract. It got bugged last year when I was editing things. So if I wanted to keep him into next year, it would be $22.8 million for a cap hit. I then released Adam Kane. Why would he want to be on our team after the first 2 years of his career? Felt it was the right thing to do here, even though it leaves us with some dead cap space. On to making some deals. We signed Miles Starkey to a 2-year contract, and then Marcus Green. I think that he proved himself a bit last year when given a chance, and I'd like to see more of him. I also think we'll see more of the fullback this year, so definitely wanted to get a deal done with Andy JANOVICH, but this one didn't work. I think Bryce Callahan was our best cornerback last season, but we could not get a new 1-year deal done. For Courtland Sutton, I thought about this one all year, went back and forth. Ultimately, I think $8 million a year is too much for 3 seasons. I had some interest in maybe a 1 or 2 year deal at a smaller per year salary. I then tried to give a contract to Von Miller, and that didn't work, so that's where the franchise tag ended up going. We do keep Von Miller, but at a very high salary. We then signed Brandon McManus and Colby Wadman, so our specialists stick around. We do not sign Deshaun Hamilton, although I did have some interest in him returning. And for Chris Harris, not interested in $9 million. I wanted to conserve some cap space because I thought we might be able to go get some offensive line help. Rodney Hudson's available again. 2 years ago we tried to sign him, that didn't work. I think most of you know how that ended up working out for us in the offensive line that season. Baker Mayfield was available, Damon Harrison, and defensive tackle was definitely a position I was targeting, but the top priority was offensive line upgrades. I knew I had to find one starter with the retirement of Kyle Long. Nobody was interested here in Jason Kelce in the first stage, so I decided to give an offer to him. I wanted to make it a good enough one to hopefully get him to accept it after just the first stage. We then gave a 2-year offer to Andy JANOVICH, topping the Oakland Raiders offer significantly. And then I also decided to give an offer to John Anderson. The chat noticed he was a superstar fullback, so I thought, why not? I really wanted to make wide receiver a priority, but there was a lot of interest in the top players, Michael Gallup, Courtland Sutton, and James Washington. So I went down a little bit in overall to look at some other players like Marquez Valdez-Scantling. There was DJ Chark. I almost traded for him a couple seasons ago. There was Auden Tate. I really wanted some players with pretty good short route running and catching traffic. But I wanted to save most of our cap space to go after Damon Harrison and Jason Kelce. Snacks Harrison is an elite run defender, and in certain matchups last year, the running game was a big issue, so I wanted to make sure we could shore up our base defense. I then went back to Chris Harris, wanted to give him an offer below the $9 million he was originally requesting. So here are the results after the first stage. We keep Marquel Pittman at defensive line. We also get Damon Harrison. John Anderson accepts. We bring in Tyus Bowser, but Andy JANOVICH is going to the Oakland Raiders. So I thought this was a pretty good start. We bring in Damon Harrison. I thought about maybe switching from a 3-4 defense, but with Harrison being a perfect nose tackle, we're not going to be changing this year. I was pretty low on cap space at this point and knew I had to open up a little more room. So I decided to release Jawan James, which would free up $13 million. That gave us some extra cap space to increase the offer on Jason Kelce and then also on Chris Harris. I still wanted to bring back Jawan James at a lower salary. You see teams do this every now and then during the offseason. At this point, I basically knew receiver had to be addressed during the draft, and there were 5 first-round options, and that was kind of my thought with our first-round pick this entire time. I just wasn't sure how many options we'd have at 24 overall. I like Jamey Sherman a lot. 4.47 is definitely fast enough, good release and short route running. Dallas Levine was interesting as a slot receiver. Those are my 2 favorite options that I thought were realistic for us to take early, but then I also was very intrigued by Emmanuel Silvers and his elite route running skills. There was also Darnell Livingston, but the 4.57 40 here did disappoint me. Remember, these draft classes are custom made by Blackjack, who's helped so much here on the channel, and the draft classes he makes give you a lot more to think about. We get through this next free agency stage. We do get Jawan James. We do bring Chris Harris back, but we lose on Jason Kelce. I tried making a good competitive offer, but once again, we miss in free agency on a very good offensive lineman. If we had signed him, I would have moved Norman Proctor to guard. Moving on, we then pick up the 5th-year option for Noah Fant. Pretty easy decision there. I then increased the contract offer for Auden Tate. Looking at the offensive line, I knew I had to look at this in the draft unless I wanted Marvin Walsh to become a starter in his 2nd season. Jason Kelce ended up going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Baker Mayfield, he's going from Cleveland to Cincinnati. A huge surprise I wasn't expecting in free agency. We then give an offer to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and I also wanted to see who was on the trade block and saw HAKEEM BUTLER, a player that I liked a lot coming out of the draft, and he had a couple key skills here that I valued. Catching traffic and the short route running at 77, that's not far from the top on our roster actually. So I decided to offer Josey Jewell 75 overall for 75 overall, and we get a deal done. I look at Butler as the replacement for Deshaun Hamilton, and I wanted to bring in just some good competition so we can figure it out in preseason. Looking more at the combine numbers, Boogie Turner was excellent. I did like Tyrone Bradshaw, but with Boogie's combine, that definitely created more of a gap between the 2 players. We then get a deal done with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So receiver had been addressed, but I still felt like it could be something we look at in the draft. Let's talk quarterback now. Toward the beginning of the stream, I said that I wanted Taquan Layton to be our quarterback moving forward, but I wasn't sure if we would bring Josh Rosen to preseason or try trading him beforehand. Rosen is more accurate than Layton, but Layton has more upside. He has the superstar development. He's very good on the run, and I was ready to have him become the starter. And looking at some of the options in free agency, I felt like we could still sign a decent backup option if we did trade Rosen, but it would have to be for a pretty high pick. And Green Bay wouldn't make it happen here for the 13th overall selection. The Lions had some interest in Josh Rosen. At pick 15, they were very interested, but that wasn't quite enough. But this let me know that we could get a deal done. The Atlanta Falcons had interest at 14 overall, but not as much as Detroit. I had to throw in a pick here, and Josh Rosen plus a 5th round pick gets us the 15th overall selection in the draft. Now, 2 first-round picks. Part of why I made this move is because I felt that we still had some needs on this team, and I like the idea of having 2 first-round picks to attack those needs, especially picking 24th in each round. So on to the NFL draft we go. I knew now with 2 first-round picks we had more options for what we could make happen. I still wanted to address receiver, maybe offensive line. I also felt like defensive tackle and corner were positions we could look at early as well. So it's time to get to the draft, and I was very interested in where a lot of players would go for this class. Starting at number 1, Rafa Augustine will now join Dwayne Haskins in Washington as they go receiver right away. Minnesota was next, and despite a need at quarterback, they go Byron Bodden with their first selection. Austin Duncan goes to Oakland, and Jamey Sherman goes earlier than I expected to the Chargers, a team that I didn't think needed receiver that bad. Then Dallas Levine goes to the Rams. I didn't count on a run-on receiver early, so that really hurt, because McKeon and JOYCE were not my preferred options. One player who was falling as a result was cornerback Shea Holloway. I was interested in him, but trading up into the top 10 is really difficult, and you often have to give up multiple first-round picks, and usually more. I then checked out the depth chart for the Cleveland Browns and saw that Centarius Phillips is actually their 4th receiver, and despite him being a first-round pick a couple years ago, he really hasn't played. So I was definitely thinking about maybe making a trade. The Colts end up going Jashaun Warfield, the first running back, and the Eagles get Shea Holloway. At number 7, that is a really good value for his skills. Jaquan Tate is off the board as the first tackle is taken. Then Carl Grant goes to New Orleans. And the Steelers take the first quarterback at number 11, Tony McAdams. They do not go Brandon Warren. Getting closer to our first selection, Justin Terry goes to Jacksonville, and the first tight end, Anthony Sarra, is drafted. The Falcons were 1 pick ahead of us, and they go Jacoby Demps. And my target for this pick was still available. I had some interest in receiver, but I also saw Boogie Turner as a potential cornerstone defensive player, and we're going to need a player like him when Von Miller retires. So I wanted to draft Boogie Turner, and he is number 1 in true value with a 78 overall rating, hidden development, and so many elite ratings right off the bat. He's fast, he's strong, he doesn't really have a weakness. He has a chance to be a very special player. That was a great way to get things started. Raekwon McNeil was next. He goes to Tennessee. Our rivals in Kansas City go Kyrie Constantine, a cornerback who ended up with hidden development. We get closer to our pick, our second first-round pick, and we see the Miami Dolphins on the clock, and they've made some big selections in this series. They go Anton Skinner, defensive end from Virginia. The Panthers take another first-round receiver in Cliff McKeon. They drafted Jason Burgess not long ago. And now we're on the clock again, 24th overall. Carl Joyce was available. I knew he had good speed and deep route running, but that wasn't really important to me at this stage. I wanted good route running, good catching traffic, a player you could play in the slot. I also had some interest in Donovan Jennings, running 4.45 at running back with 8+ break tackle. I felt like he might be a special running back prospect. For offensive line, all the great prospects were already drafted, so that didn't feel like an option. But I was also considering Mario Townsend at outside linebacker because Von Miller is regressing and I know he's close to retirement. The chat also had a lot of interest in safety Brett Messier, one of the best tackling safeties in the class. Ultimately here, I felt like the biggest difference we could make was drafting Donovan Jennings. This wasn't what I expected going into the offseason, but Jennings gave us a great skill set and a player that I just couldn't pass up on here late first round. Jennings has great speed, awesome break tackle. The only thing he doesn't do well is catch the football, but otherwise he's a great runner. Carl Joyce goes a few picks later to the New York Jets. His overall was a lot higher than I expected it. Into the second round, Brandon Warren, Kalispell Warhawk legend, has been drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. He is their new starting quarterback. Mario Townsend then goes to our rivals, the Chargers. I'm not very happy about it. Later in the second round, Brett Messier is selected by the Jacksonville Jaguars at 71 overall. Marty Belafonte, another Kalispell player, goes to the Atlanta Falcons. So we make it to our next pick here in the second round, and I felt like most of these offensive linemen would not be better than Marvin Walsh. So I had to think even more about receiver, but I didn't think the second round was quite the right time. I thought the third round would be better. So I went for another prospect that I felt was just too good to pass up. Xavier Watts. He's the pick. 6'4" safety, great cover skills off the bat, and he has 93 speed. I love his skills here on day one. In Blackjack's draft classes, you get more unique skill sets, and I love bringing in a player like Watts when we have both of our starting safeties, I believe now, 28 or 29 years old. After that, I had some interest in maybe making a move to acquire Centarius Phillips. I also wanted to see where these receivers would go. I decided not to make a trade here early in the third, but the Vikings surprised me by taking Emmanuel Silvers early in the third when he was a late third round prospect. Silvers may have been the pick if we had the chance to select him. There was still Kevin Doolittle, and then Darnell Livingston, who was a fourth round prospect, along with Justin Payne. It became very difficult to pick which receiver I was really going to target in this spot. There were some different kinds of skill sets, and the top 3 system only gives you so much information. Justin Payne, for instance, I didn't even know his route running skills. They could have been good, but I couldn't know from there. Not even short route running. Darnell Livingston was taken by the Bears, so even less options now as we continue. Looking at our skills here, we have some players with decent catch in traffic now. I felt like route running was really what we had to target, and Silvers wasn't there. So what do? Given that Justin Payne was a slot archetype, I assumed some of his route running skills were good, but I just wasn't sure. The only thing I was sure of was Centarius Phillips. Nick Mullins is the new quarterback for the Browns. Phillips is 4th on the depth chart. Could we make a move? Phillip Lindsay and a 3rd round pick. We brought in Donovan Jennings, so trading Lindsay was something we could consider. And the trade was made. Centarius Phillips comes to the Denver Broncos. I thought this was a pretty fair trade, especially considering they no longer have Baker Mayfield. We help out their backfield a little bit now. It's Nick Chubb and Phillip Lindsay. And we get some added receiver depth when they weren't really playing Phillips much. So we continue on, and now in the 4th round we go Antoine Bayless, adding some corner depth to the team. This was a good value for us, but Bayless does need a lot of development. The Browns end up selecting another Kalispell player in Antoine Knightley here in the 6th round, and this is where we trade out for a future 4th round pick from Jacksonville. We had 1 pick left in the 7th round, and the chat wanted to see us take the top combine offensive lineman. That was Dexter Wheeler out of Minnesota, and he was a 65 overall here in the 7th round. Very happy with that. He's immediately one of our best backup players. And that concludes the latest draft here in the Denver Broncos franchise. There were a lot of challenges in this offseason, and I really didn't think we'd go running back early. But looking at the final result here with the roster, I do like where the team is at. Here are some of the other players taken. RAFA Augustine, number 1, 77 overall receiver. That was a good pick. The Vikings get BYRON, BODDEN. They get Brandon Warren in the second round. I thought that was a nice draft for them. The Chargers get Jamey Sherman, normal dev. I still think that if we had a chance in the first round, we would have taken him. Dallas Levine goes to the Rams, and we'll be seeing them week 1. Ja'Shawn Warfield, top running back in this class, goes to the Colts. Great power and speed skill set. Shea Holloway, 83-man coverage, very good speed. If we didn't have as many needs as we did, I think I would have given up a ton to move up to select him. Cliff McKeon, nice skill set here with the Panthers, but Carl Joyce really surprised me. He would not have been a bad first round pick for us. Even if his short route running's a little bit lower than the others, he still would have been a nice pick. Brandon Warren is the newest quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, and we'll see how he develops in the series. I've been very excited for that. But Tony McAdams was the first quarterback taken. He has elite short accuracy, but not so much down the field. Emmanuel Silvers, the route runnings were incredible. He would have been the best route runner on our team without playing a single snap. Gotta keep in mind though, his catch in traffic and release are very bad. Darnell Livingston, good skill set here in Chicago, and 88 speed is enough. I thought with 4.57 he would have been slower. Mario Townsend, he'll need some time, but with a hidden development trait, I do think he'll develop into a nice player. And here's Justin Payne, not a bad skill set here on day 1, but I'm very happy getting Centarius Phillips instead. Mo Collins, by the way, he goes to the Rams, a little bit lower rated, but he does have a hidden trait. We'll have to see if he develops in this series. And that will take us into the preseason. Here is a look at our schedule this season. I do think it's very underwhelming. I wanted to face the NFC North, but that's going to happen next season. We don't face the Miami Dolphins either, and we play the Chiefs in back-to-back games early in the season, which is really odd. Despite the schedule, I'm very excited to see this team play. Centarius Phillips gives us a potential star. We'll have to see how he plays. He hasn't developed much in his young career because the Browns just have been playing Josh Gordon, Jarvis Landry, and Odell Beckham. We did make a few more signings ahead of preseason. We do make Phillip Rivers the new backup quarterback to Taquan Layton. Rivers still has some decent short accuracy, and he's coming off appearing in the Super Bowl with the Patriots. We also signed Vic Beasley as we could use some better pass rush depth. We brought in undrafted linebacker Trey Betts out of Tennessee State. Creating more competition at wide receiver, we sign undrafted wideout Arsenio Choice. And as a project quarterback, how about Kalispell's Dustin Payment? He's signed to the roster, and you'll see these players take the field next time in preseason. I've been very excited to see this new offense built around Taquan Layton. I do have some questions about wide receiver and how everything's going to come together this year. We didn't address it early in the first round, but we get Centarius Phillips and add a first round running back that replaces Phillip Lindsay. Taquan Layton is a good quarterback. He's been fun to play with, but his accuracies are lower than Josh Rosen's, and I have to get used to that. His deep accuracy is much worse. I don't want to take a lot of deep shots this year. I'm hoping we can limit the turnovers and sacks. I also want to be a good running team. We have Royce Freeman coming off a career best season. We have Marion Peppers entering year 2, and now Donovan Jennings with Marcus Green. I have spent a lot of time thinking about what I want to do with this offense, and I'll have the preseason coming your way soon, and you'll see what my vision for this year's offense is. Let me know what you thought of our offseason down below in the comments section. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you're enjoying the series and are excited for year 4. And we'll be getting to preseason here very shortly, followed by week 1 against the Los Angeles Rams. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all again soon. Have a great day, everybody.